How are you?
Yeah, really well, thanks, my love. Yeah, busy, but all right.
You look like you've already got up and exercised this morning.
No, that's coming up after this.
Oh,
and
that's the next thing.
It's quite an unpleasant sort of... I'm doing qualifiers for a big competition in a team of two with
Right.
a lovely friend, but another pair of people are doing it, and we're all sort of doing this next qualifier together. We've got to film ourselves, and the workout we have to do today is horrible. Not my cup of tea.
Oh, really?
At all. Yeah, just loads of burpees and stuff.
But is it worth it?
I'll feel lovely afterwards, and when it's done, I'll give myself 5 minutes and a sugary snack, and then I'll get on with my training and have a lovely time. And it is worth it. If you get to the final, you get to have this extraordinary adrenaline-filled day in a warehouse in Coventry, which I don't feel like I'm really selling. But
I mean, to be honest with you, I can't think of anything better than an adrenaline-filled day in a warehouse in Coventry. Sounds like the dream for me.
That you pay to be at, and yeah.
Oh, it sounds like the dream. The Spontaneity Shop presents The Guilty Feminist Watchers, and just like that, the Sex and the City reheal. With me, Deborah Frances White, and my very special guest, Jessica Fostekew. Season 2, Episode 10, The Last Supper, Part 1. Appetizer. So, Jess Fostekew, you've watched this season of Just Like That. Any general comments about how you're feeling about Sex and the City and Just Like That, or anything before we go into this episode and penetrate it deeply?
Well, I tell you what, being on such a late episode has been a bittersweet pill. On the one hand, I've been forced to watch pretty much the entire thing just to get to this episode, which I think is a slight kind of, I don't know. I've taken one for the team of co-hosts.
Jess, you just told me that you were doing the worst training session of the world, including burpees, in order to get to a future goal, which is some competition in a Coventry warehouse that's going to make you happy.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it to you that
actually sitting down and watching 10 hours of telly is quite an easy
just that
job.
It's a very similar trajectory. Sometimes you have to put the yards in early and take one for the team, which you're doing today.
And here's the sweet bit of the pill. I have had to watch 10 hours of this, including ads. But what's bizarre is I'm glad I have, because the episode we're discussing, finally, they've introduced a little bit of story. They've gone, all right, 19 episodes in now we are to this revamp. I reckon they're invested enough in the characters that we can risk sort of letting anything happen to any of them.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's
really good. The last episode was really good.
Finally.
I have got thoughts about the series generally.
Okay, thoughts about the series generally. Go.
It's been really funny to have my partner Steph pop in as I've been watching this, having not watched it since the original series, and pop in and say things like, why is that lady in that lady's house? Why is the gay man in their house? Why is the girl underscoring her own scene? I think some of the cartoon acting has brought me joy in ways that it wasn't meant to. I feel like, and I know this, okay, I'm a feminist, but Charlotte has had such an extraordinary amount of business done. I think she looks great, but it's like, it's a look, right? A purposeful look, I think, when you go for that much of all the fillers and all the things. That's no judgment, but I think her acting was already quite cartoony, and it sort of adds to it in a weird, bizarre way. And also Lisa, who I really like as a character, I don't know if you've noticed this, but it really, having to watch them all, I didn't have to, I was just disorganized. I watched them all in quite quick succession. I noticed, and you can go back and look for this because it's really fun, about every 4 words she just has a quick look at the camera.
Really?
Yeah, and it's she's sort of constantly sort of
checking in for validation,
monitor to look at her reflection. I don't know, but it's like, what is happening here?
I always think she must be the most beautiful woman in the world. Gosh, she's beautiful, and her clothes are absolutely incredible. So I don't really notice her acting because I'm always like, gosh, look at that. Look at that outfit. Look at that glamour. Look at that dressing room she's sitting in. But I will notice that now. I bet I notice that now.
Yeah, you will notice that.
I mean, that's
now.
the kind of acting I would probably do. Like where I'd look at the director like, is this any good?
Yeah. It's fair. And also, this is on Sky Comedy, and a lot of this, I'm going to sound like such an asshole now. A lot of the time I watch this and think, is it? And so, or is it a very thin drama with witty moments? But when things happen like, you know, a really high profile actor looks at the camera all the time, I do laugh out loud and think, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that is funny. That is comedy. I thought there have been brilliant scenes to throw some light in with all my shade. I thought that Carrie's Zoom about promoting her book with the sort of Gen Z journalist who hadn't even read it was so on the money and brutal. That was brilliant.
We've all been there, to be fair.
Yeah. Like, I mean, whatever you're promoting, it's a brutal task enough. And, oh God, yeah. I quite like the on the nose dealing with the included branding that needs to be there. And they've not, rather than just sort of sprinkle the odd Apple product around, they've had a whole scene in an Apple store, which is a first. That was as close as I've witnessed to seeing, well, an actual advert in the middle of a narrative piece of writing ever. They actually said, I always have the latest model. Oh, well, I don't mind. I'm still happy because my XR100108 is still working or something. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
That was
advertorial.
You've just done an ad.
Yeah, it's advertorial.
Yeah. And you see that sometimes in more reality-ents type stuff, entertainment-y type stuff, like where, because people are like, you know, like 3 people have just done some challenge and they're like, and now we have a Gatorade. But like, I haven't seen it in a narrative thing like that where you just stop and do an ad.
Yeah, it's pretty hard on. At the moment, they seem to be doing something. I don't know if it's with some plant-based lobby or something, but last week they were like, "Oh, Miranda says I'll have the steak.
Actually, I'll have the plant-based
And this week there was a scene which it was written like they were jokes or like it was wit, but it wasn't. It was this. It was a bit like, you know, like an old school like chips ad or something like that. So this is it. Can I tell them your exciting news, Lisa? Well, it's not as exciting as these zucchini chips. I'm living for these chips. It's important. I wrote down the dialogue. Yeah. It's important to have some. And I feel I can criticise Sex and the City because it's like family and we're allowed to criticise family. Yeah. It's important to have something to live for. PBS is turning Lisa's doc into a 10-part series. Wow, that's amazing. And a tad more exciting than these chips. And then Charlotte takes a phone call and refers to brunch and ladies. And there's some quips about ladies who lunch, ladies who brunch. And then one of them says, well, we're ladies who brunch vegan, so it updates the scenario.
What? She's literally said that.
And then somebody says, may I have a zucchini chip? And I was like, okay, something's going on here. They're working with a plant. It might be a plant-based lobby or something that wants.
They've got to be, haven't they? Because it was really, it really stood out. Do you know what? That all flew by me. But that scene where Miranda was choosing a sandwich and says steak, and then goes, "Oh no, actually, I have the vegan option." I think you do look at that and all the Apple stuff and all the other stuff that probably they successfully have slithered past us. But you do get the impression, as if it wasn't hard enough to write a really strong ensemble show like this where you genuinely can follow everything and care about everything and feel enriched by all these stories. But to then have the added pressure as a writing team of including all these different, you can hear the producers' notes in scenes like that going, oh no, we've got to say this. And then we've got to, how many times have we mentioned it in this? And
it's so strange.
It's so strange. It is a bizarre thing.
It's just this, but it sounds like it's got the rhythms of an old witty Sex and the City brunch, but with no wit. There's no wit in that, any of that. Not as exciting as these zucchini chips. I'm living for these chips. Well, you've got to have something to live for. I'm like, what? That sounds like an old Sex and the City riff where they're back and forth, but there's no zingers in it. There's just words. It really surprised me. It really surprised me. And then I literally wrote it down. But we both noted the plant-based and the other one, but there's been a lot of that in this season. To recap this week's episode, just so we can, because some listeners don't watch it, they just hear the recap and then they get straight into the chat. Okay, so to recap this week's episode, Charlotte sells a painting to actual Sam Smith and throws her phone in a margarita. to get rid of her family constantly texting as she realises she's more than a wife and mum, much to her family's chagrin. Miranda works at the UN, which is a career highlight, but then decides not to throw an ex away on everyone else's advice and goes to see Che's comedy set in Brooklyn and confirms Alison Spittle's theory that the writers have dated some comics and are dragging them with the whole Che thing. It's all about dragging a comedian because people keep going, but Che's a narcissist. Che's like, but I'm doing a pilot in LA, you have to come. Oh my God, your phone went off. Fuck you. No, you're not allowed to go back and see your kid. And everyone's been going, Che's a narcissist, Che's a narcissist. And Alison came on a few weeks ago and went, Che's a stand-up comedian. This is a joke about, the whole thing is a joke about, want to date a stand-up comic? The Room are, they're writers in LA or New York, and they've dated comics and they think this is absolutely hilarious. And
this is it. They're destroying them.
Alison predicted this would happen.
That is such a good theory.
It's true. Alison predicted this would happen. Alison predicted that Che would break up with Miranda and start doing comedy about Miranda, and that would be the worst thing in the world.
Whoa.
Yeah, Alison predicted it.
Alison's
a fucking genius.
I had been basic and just thinking they've made Che unbearable, this series.
They are dragging every comedian they've dated. Carrie plans her big last supper in anticipation of being together with Aidan, and then his son drink drives, and Aidan has a breakdown saying, I should have been there, making us question whether Aidan really will come and spend time in this big New York house she's just bought for them to live in together. Carrie sells her apartment, her classic, iconic apartment that she's always had, for a song to the young jeweler downstairs who recently was stony broke, but now can somehow get a mortgage in Manhattan, even if it is a cheap one. Meanwhile, Carrie's best friend Miranda is homeless. And she's got extra flats she doesn't know what to do with. She's just throwing them away, and Miranda's got nowhere to live. Miranda's
and as if
in
things
a box
aren't
room.
nice enough for the child that plays the jeweler, who's had maybe 3 scenes in the entire pair of series.
She's thrilled.
Her third scene, which was in this episode, when she was gifted a Manhattan mega flat, she also got to spend the entire scene cuddling a newborn kitten.
And she kind of looks like Carrie, doesn't she? She's got that curly hair.
Yeah, she's meant to be Carrie from the past, isn't she?
Yeah, she is. I think they would have been better off doing a show about her, honestly. Naya got a baby shower invitation from her ex, and her response was to buy that ex $1,000 pram as a fuck you.
Hipster buggy.
I didn't get that. It's a bit complicated, that.
Wouldn't you send them a bag of fresh shit?
It's tricky. Seema says, I love you to her New York man. Seema says, I love you to her new man, Ravi, during sex.
I love that bit, and I've got a story about
Excellent,
it.
And wants to take it back. We're going to hit that again. And finally, Stanford becomes a Shinto monk in Japan, and that makes Anthony realise that maybe he should try being a bottom. That's what happens. That is what happens.
This is literally, and that follows that. Does that follow
is
that?
What happens? I'm not making that up. I watched it again and I went, Anthony,
I don't understand why Stanford is still getting mentions in this. It's bizarre.
It's very strange. So let's first of all talk about this storyline.
And we've got Lisa as well. She's not had much happen. She's had her film career be about to kick off. And then in this episode, she gets an entire series worth of story in one episode.
Yes. I forgot that in my recap, but I did have it written in my notes. So sorry. So let's start with that, actually. Lisa Todd Wexley doesn't want to be pregnant when her career is exploding, but isn't able to say the word abortion or termination. She just says, I'm glad I have the choice, but no, I couldn't do that when asked the question, should we be having the other conversation? Interestingly, she can say the word vasectomy several times. And she says it's a coded way about saying, I'm glad I have the option. So what I find weird about this is, in the OG Sex and the City, Miranda booked a termination for Brady and at the last minute decided to keep him because she just said, well, might be the last chance to have a baby. Absolutely fair enough. But in that episode, they really dealt with it. Carrie said she'd had an abortion and Samantha said she'd had 2, and they all used the word abortion and they all talked about it. Yeah. And it was on the table, and now it's like this weird
Well, it shows how we've fucking regressed as a society, no? That we have to now be that sensitive. Like how much closer we've stepped towards Gilead, potentially, but from the 90s to now.
Shows.
So that we now have to be like, we have to dance around.
Do you think because...
kind of maybe hinting that we're sort of pleased
so
we might still be allowed
though, because
to control our own bodies.
Shows are having abortions, which is so coy.
Yeah.
And also this is...
that's weirdly coy for this show because they've been so...
It's HBO.
I mean, they've gone out of their way. If anything, they've gone laughably out of their way.
Yeah, to update
their
show.
Sensibilities.
Sometimes in such a clanging fashion that it's embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, and you don't need an actual flag on a laptop. We get it. Like
I know. And so it's just very weird that they would not be allowed to say the word abortion or able to say the word abortion or termination. She's married to someone who's running for a political position, and he can't
Congress, maybe
say to his wife, look, if you want to have a termination, and maybe he's being sensitive to her because if you've got a fetus inside of you, maybe he might, I don't know. But it's just a bit weird. It's just a bit weird that if Charlotte had said it and then her husband had been sort of dancing around it because he felt it, it was sensitive or whatever, that would be one thing. But why did they not let Charlotte or Miranda? Like Miranda could have said to her, I know she hasn't said it to anyone else except Charlotte yet, but if I were in that writer's room, I would have said, let Miranda in on it after the lunch and had her say, I seriously considered having a termination when I was having Brady, and that seems very weird now because, of course, Brady's my grown-up son. But it's okay to consider it.
She's recently had a horrible argument, not in this episode, but the one before, with her ex about him.
He says you didn't even want Brady,
saying you never wanted your son. Anyway,
having said that,
so it would be.
She never even told him she was thinking about having a termination. She didn't tell Brady.
Would have made sense.
She didn't tell Steve
story for that to happen
until she decided to keep who turned out to be Brady, and then told Steve, "Hey, I'm pregnant. I'm going to keep the baby, and you can be involved or not." And never said I considered a termination. So I never knew. I didn't really understand why Steve said you never even wanted Brady, because how would he have known that? Maybe they discussed it at some point.
Oh yeah.
But he did apologise for it. Maybe he just meant in your attitude you weren't that into being a mum when Brady was small. Who knows? Yeah. But what did you think about the end of this episode where Lisa says, I'm bleeding and it's too late to go to the hospital?
Sad. It's really sad. I thought that was one of the most affecting moments in the series, if not the most so far.
It's quite a strange storyline though, isn't it? It's like, I don't want to be pregnant, but I can't bring myself to terminate. And now
the decision's made for us, and this is really sad. I think there's something, oh God, I mean, I think there's something quite powerful I thought there was something quite powerful in her dilemma, like that she's waited, until her mid-50s, presumably, to get this huge career break.
Because she has been raising three children as well as supporting her
and like to then have this happen as an accident, as it does. Also, I think there'll be people that don't know that can still happen as an accident. Like that in itself is really strong stuff, I think. But then it sort of feels like, I don't know. I hadn't realised how much I cared about her. I felt really sad hearing that. I felt like that scene was done really well. But like you say, it's, I suppose just on a grander scheme, I'm slightly disappointed that they've wedged all of that crescendo into one episode for her. All of that dilemma and the resolution into one episode out of 11. And also just disappointing that they weren't at least able to say the words.
So strange. But do you know what I've just thought, what you've made me think now? I hadn't thought of this before. There are women currently in America, and presumably sometimes trans people, being prosecuted for miscarriages and, you did this, or, around the world, actually, that happens, that sometimes they come after them and say you did an at-home abortion.
What?
So whether or not the writers wanted to demonstrate, sometimes someone can be conflicted about having a baby, decide they don't want an abortion and still miscarry, in order to demonstrate that you should not prosecute when someone miscarries and assume it was an at-home abortion. Is that what they were going for?
That's the most generous theory, I think, that we can
I think it must be something like that. because otherwise I can't really understand it, because it's like that.
Because so much thought's gone into everything else in this.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I think it's very, 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 a very strange storyline. But I guess it is the poignancy of you don't really want something, but then when you lose it, you think maybe I did want it.
Yeah, I hadn't made my mind up yet. And actually, women's choice is already not going to be entirely women's choice because we can't control our bodies entirely. You know, there's a sad kind of truth in that too, you know, like...
A woman's right to choose sometimes gets taken away by nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really interesting one. Yeah.
Really often. Yeah.
Yeah. Miscarriage is very, 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 very frequent. But it was a strange... It was, but she didn't say the word miscarriage either. She didn't wake him up and say, I think I've had a miscarriage. She woke him up and said, there's bleeding. And he said, let's go to the hospital. Yeah. She said, it's too late. At no point did she say, I don't think I can have an abortion because I've got my 3 kids, and it just, you know, which is valid, and it's not feminist to feel you don't want to do that, even if you're not sure you want another child. You know, there's all sorts of emotions and feelings in that, which are absolutely understandable. But she also couldn't say the word miscarriage. And if she had not said the word vasectomy, I'd be more like, they're doing that.
Well, that character doesn't get to the point. That character doesn't straight speak, etc.
Exactly. That character is what she does.
Happy to say vasectomy.
You should have had a vasectomy 8 years ago when I told you to have a vasectomy. So, okay, fair enough.
And actually, in every other instance, like, her event, at that conference event and stuff like that, she's like, she always says a perfect thing, right? She nails it. So it is weird that she's suddenly become someone who talks around the thing.
Yeah.
But then...
Yeah. I mean, it was a strange storyline. I went online to see what people said about it, and there were lots of people writing what's happened to Sex and the City that it can't now. It used to be so on these issues. Also, to be honest, they had Gloria Steinem on a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And Carrie said to Gloria Steinem, I've admired you all your life. And I was like, you did lie to Aidan about having an abortion because you were embarrassed. And I was like, you absolutely, you've admired Gloria all your life. You literally couldn't tell you told your boyfriend you'd never had an abortion because you were ashamed and then went, I did, but I was 21. I was 19. 21. 23.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Are you enjoying the clothes? Should we get that covered? Are you enjoying the clothes? My favourite thing about the clothes has been that in every single episode, Carrie has worn a different entire bed.
She has. I don't know why they're covering up so much. I loved that outfit she was wearing. Oh, I've got to tell you something. That outfit she was wearing in the first episode of last week's, where she was in underwear with this sheer thing over the top, which was to me like old Carrie. And I don't understand why she still doesn't dress like old Carrie and why she's in so many duvets. Although I did like that snow duvet coat. I loved that.
Snow duvet was like something out of Frozen.
I loved that.
Wasn't it?
I loved that. But I got an Easter egg from so many people, because last week we talked about why Aidan was in tighty whities in that scene, that he's got this miraculous body for a man in his 60s. That actor's in his 60s. But he's clearly been doing a lot of your kind of burpees and CrossFit.
PE.
He's been doing all your PE, clearly, because he's 62 and he's got abs for days. But he was in tighty whities and we were like, that wasn't very attractive underwear. I had so many people write in to say it was an Easter egg. They were the same pants he was wearing when Carrie took a call from Big and said, sorry, but he's still in my life, he's still my friend, and he got really upset about it. And then the two men had a fight in the mud in the country. He was in the same pants, and lots of people, I think Geordie might have been the first one, Geordie Stavros might have been the first one to write in and say, but loads of people wrote in and said,
that is very cool to notice that.
And Geordie also told us there was a cameo from Ryan Serhant from $1 Million Listening, that he was the real estate agent helping Seema when she slept with the Marvel director. So I don't watch reality television really. So $1 Million.
No, I don't either. But I thought that I really noticed that person because I thought the writing was really nice around the sort of bitchy little. Well, we'll do anything to get the sale.
Right.
I thought that was a real like.
Yeah. Well, apparently that person is a real estate agent.
That's really funny. Like a celebrity estate agent.
And so everyone shouting out. Just to be clear, everyone's shouting out. He was wearing the white pants because he was, etc., etc. We missed it entirely. It's not like us to miss an Easter egg, but we missed it entirely, and we We are thrilled to be informed and updated. Hello, Guilty Feminists. This is Deborah. We're recording more live episodes and you can come and see us. We are live in Chichester on the 21st of August, where we'll be talking to the cast of my new play, Never Have I Ever. You can also see my new play, Never Have I Ever, if you can get to Chichester in September. It's starring Susan Wokoma, Greg Wise, Alexandra Roach, and Amit Shah, and is being directed by the incredible Emma Butler. And we're recording episodes of The Guilty Feminist and Global Pillage at the London Podcast Festival on Saturday the 16th and Sunday the 17th of September. For tickets to any of these, go to guiltyfeminist.com and click on live shows, except if you want to go to the play, and then I want you to go to cft.org.uk. You can also get ad-free episodes via Patreon, Apple Podcasts or Acast Plus. And if you're passing iTunes or Spotify and you felt like leaving us a 5-star review, we'd love you forever. It really does help people find the podcast, as does subscribing or following. And now, back to the podcast. Now, you said you had a story about Seema saying, I love you too early. Can you tell us about that?
I love that moment. And I like the idea that keeps happening to adults. But I had lots of sort of silly couple of weeks, maybe the odd couple of months boyfriends. But my first proper, whopper, a year plus or whatever, Dave, I was 15, 16. We got on with this stuff early in the countryside. And I think I'd already been quite grown up about, I don't want to talk about emotions until they're overwhelming. Thank you very much. I wasn't soppy. Anyway, I remember my cousins were down who were my brother and sister were really close. And it was back when we used landlines mainly. I don't think I even had a mobile phone yet. And Dave rang and I picked it up in the lounge where obviously other people were. And at the end of the phone call, I just said, okay, I love you, bye. And then hung up and was like, and I remember my cousin Dan looking at me and going, like that. And then the phone rang and I picked it up and it was Dave going, what did you just say? And I went, nothing, and hung up. Nothing. And hung up. I was like, oh no.
Do you think it was I love you slipping out, or was it reflexive the way you say I love you too, Mom, or something like that? Did you mean it?
Oh no, I did. I loved him. Yeah, I always loved him. But I loved him as a bit. He was such a kind man. He was such a lovely man. He is such a lovely man.
Why did you break up with Dave?
I'm still in touch. Dave was a bit older than me and he was ready to settle down. And I was 16 and I was like, I want a party. I want to go to uni. I want 1,000 lovers. I did not want to settle down. He was like, maybe we should talk about marriage and kids. So I was like, nope. So I dumped him and broke his heart.
That's very much the story of Carrie and Aidan. And now they're together. So if things don't work out with Steph, I think give Dave a call. Now, I'm sure they will work out with Steph. That was a joke. Steph, if you listen to this, that was
Steph,
a joke.
She's joking.
Joking. I know they will work out. And, oh, God, I'm cursing that now. Oh, God. Back me out of this cul-de-sac.
I love it.
Well, I kind of loved that Seema vomited out I love you. And that Ravi said it too. I knew this was going to be her big love, and I'm really thrilled for her.
I want to know a bit more about him. All we know is that he's sort of a little bit sexy. Although, I quite like it that we don't find out that much about the men.
Yeah. I think it is a show where the men are allowed to be the boyfriends. But, yeah, I think we will. Yeah. We will find out more about him. Carrie sells her apartment to the jeweler downstairs. I know Miranda cannot move into the iconic apartment because that would be weird to have Miranda now being Carrie. But when Carrie was in financial difficulties and wanted to buy her apartment off Aidan because otherwise she was going to get kicked out, and she realised what a good deal her apartment was. And effectively her apartment is a bedsit. It's not got a separate bedroom, but it's spacious. It's not like the crazy kind of friends' apartments, which are absurd in a sitcom way of no one could really afford that. Actually, it's one room with a curtain between the bed and the living. It's not that big. It's just got a really big wardrobe, which she loves. But the wardrobe goes into the bathroom. It's a bit of a weird Manhattan apartment and a tiny old-fashioned kitchen. I've always bought she could have lived in that apartment, especially in the 90s when things were not so absurdly priced, and she bought it in the noughties. When she was going to get kicked out, and she had previously been on rent controlled and so on and so on. She went and looked at other apartments and went, oh my God, I can't afford anything anymore. I need to find a way to buy this apartment. Didn't have a deposit. Miranda said, I'll help you. Samantha said, I'll help you. And Charlotte didn't. And she went and had a go at Charlotte. And Charlotte went, I don't like money and friends, did all of that. And then Charlotte eventually did help her, gave her her engagement ring, which obviously was enough grand that she could buy the apartment, probably 50 grand or something. Miranda is now clearly in a situation where she's a student again. She hasn't yet, so as not to destabilise her son, sold the house, and her ex is living in the house. And she is literally living in a box room. And the bathroom is through the owner of the flat's bedroom. So she sometimes has to go home to go to the loo, presumably. I find it weird that Carrie, who's got obviously so much more money than God, because she is buying in Manhattan, in Gramercy. We looked up houses in Gramercy, and it looks like a house, not an apartment.
Yeah.
Looking over Gramercy Park.
Oh, yeah.
It must be like 30 million. And has then
Jesus Christ,
given her flat away effectively. She must have, to the Stony Brook jeweler downstairs. She must have said, well, you can have it for $5,000 or something. I can't understand how that jeweler, I don't understand what's happened there. But Miranda's homeless. Like, she was so angry when Charlotte didn't help her. Discuss. What do you think about this?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't make any sense. And that's the one
Why
thing
is Miranda
that
not more like...
That's the one thing that really tickled me about all this, is I think they've, like, you could have made so much more room for real story. Like, if you hadn't had all of them sofa surfing between each other's gaffs. So that was what really tickled me about whenever Steph popped in while I was watching. She'd be like, she living in her house now? Like, she was just so confused about why is everyone in and out of everyone's
that Carrie had to go and stay at Chase.
Yeah.
But like all of that I found absurd. I was like, there's no way she's so rich she'd just take an Airbnb in her neighbourhood permanently. She would not be like going over to Chase in Brooklyn. It was absolutely weird.
There's another scene I not really yet don't understand the scenes where Che is watching themselves.
Well, we need to talk
when
about
they
this.
were Cheryl doing stand-up. I don't get, was that scene meant to foreshadow Che's horrible stand-up about Miranda? Because I couldn't follow the logic of it.
It wasn't clear.
I don't think getting upset about that really justifies writing and performing such nasty, not true comedy about a recent ex.
Well, the whole vibe of that comedy club was nasty, wasn't it? Like, the person before pointed at two people in the audience and said, oh, you're a cishet couple cruising queer comedy clubs to get yourself some nasty, non-binary dick and pussy. And I was just like, oh my God, I've never heard a comedian talk like that to anybody in an audience. And also, and I've been to some rough clubs, but I was just like, why are you saying that? You don't want people supporting your comedy club. That's so weird. They were just a couple that had come to see some comedy and they're like, oh, what's on in here then? And it's like, what are you saying that you want that they're sexually harassing the acts when all they were doing was sitting there? That was really unpleasant.
Yeah.
And now Che Diaz, if I'd been brought on after that, I'd been upset. I would have been like, why did you say that? And I'd be like saying to the people in the audience, are you okay? And instead they did this really nasty routine about Miranda that, again, had it been really funny.
Yeah.
Like, I know comedians who do rag on their exes, but if it's really funny, I understand, they've exaggerated, it's hyperbole, blah, blah, blah. But it's just not good jokes.
Oh, I mean, I actually don't know any successful comedians who are really nasty about their ex. Not in that, like, you actually go to the lengths of saying, like, really, crap at sex, horrible about her whole personality. Like, it was really, like, it was so uncomfortable. What are they having go on with? It really does feel like Alison's nailed that.
Alison has nailed that.
It really does feel like they're going, oh, somebody has had a bad time dating some horrible.
Yeah, it was very, very strange. But also, I didn't understand why Carrie and Aidan didn't leave with Miranda and weren't more upset with Miranda. And then Carrie says to Miranda, come on, you've got to come to my dinner party. You're not in high school. Get over it. And I was like, and she said, well, you didn't hear what Che said to me outside. And Carrie said, well, I don't really care.
What?
And I was like,
what?
I would really care. If I went to a comedy club with you.
I think Miranda's been trampled in this series.
Really not
she's
cool.
I'm glad she's having a good time at work because she's been so shat on by Che and so like patient with Che, so kind and then kind of taken a dumping really easily. Thank God she left the cat shit lady's house and had enough self-respect to walk out of there before anything happened, just because she's got, I'm gonna call it like a vaguely sexy voice. Like, I'm glad she had it, and she had like a sexy moment with an English actor, didn't she, from the UN. I'm glad she's having moments of joy, but she's generally been pretty trodden. And actually, Carrie's doing some shit friending there.
Carrie's a bad friend. Just let's out with it. Fucking bad friend.
Yes.
Okay, Miranda's been her friend
since. Then I'm okay to say it.
Miranda's been her friend. She was always a bad friend. She would always go over it. One time Miranda called her on and said, you've just come over to talk about Bigger Aiden or whatever, and you don't really care about me. She'd brought bagels but no cream cheese. I remember that being a sticking point. It's like, this is an excuse just to talk to rant. Yeah. And she's been Miranda's friend since the 80s or the 90s, because they were already really good friends when we joined them in like the mid-90s. And I'm like, you've just met Che, and Che is Miranda's ex, and Che has not treated Miranda well. And if you want to go and support Che's comedy, that's fine. But saying to Miranda, you just throw all your exes away, and then sitting next to her, watching Che say unspeakable things about her and not leaving with her and not going, that was really not very nice of Che, and I'll support you. I'm not going to pick a huge fight with Che, but
no, Carrie's backed her exes and not her friend over and over again in this, and she shat on Seema by promising to that house and then backing out of it. At least she got called out on that.
Yeah, that's true. And I don't mind her just still being friends with Steve, because Steve's the nicest person in the world and hasn't really done anything wrong. Yeah. But there is a sort of
really good at boxing as well.
There is a sort of, you're my friend, therefore I'm, I'll be Team Miranda because your mates are meant to support you, and she's more Miranda's mate than Steve's mate. It feels like, I get the one with Steve because it wasn't his fault, and he was a good husband. But the one thing with Che of, I'm going to support her comedy, even if it's absolutely vile about you, and I am going to then force you to have dinner with her, rather than say to Che, look, Miranda's feeling upset about the comedy. Do you think it's okay if you don't come to the last supper?
Yeah, don't come. You don't like coming to things anyway. You've been bragging about that all series.
Yeah.
Go home and have one of your particularly massive joints.
I think I would say...
Think about what you've done.
If you dated a comedian who you really fell hard for, and then you broke up and they had not treated you well, and then they did this massive comedy rant, and I was at the club because... I'm friends with both of you, or I'm at a comedy club. Yeah. And they did a nasty rant about you and you left in tears. I would follow you and I would go, actually, I've just had a word with them about not coming to my party because I want you to come. And I just think what they said was unfair.
Debs, thanks.
Yeah, I would. And I'm a better friend than Carrie. I'm putting that out there. I would not say, you're not in high school. Come and sit opposite them at the table and have to be nice to them all night, even though they're going, because they're going to go around to other clubs and do that. And I'll tell you what, Alison's theory is absolutely on the money. What happens? Do you remember what happens when Miranda walks away in tears? Who comes up to Che afterwards? Do you remember this?
Carrie. Is that Carrie?
No, it's a fan who fancies them.
Oh, yeah.
A fan
Toby.
Who fancies them. Toby comes up.
Yeah.
And then Che goes, oh, no one understands that I just got to be myself, and they're all demanding that I be someone I'm not, and da-da-da-da-da. And then Toby goes, no, feel your feelings, be yourself, because I fancy you.
Toby's trying to get in their pants, yeah. And there's nothing hotter than someone who's sad and angry at the same time, or something bizarre like that. It's like, that you've got issues, actually, if that's what you're after. And if you want me when I'm stress crying, that is
100% what I've seen comedians do. I have been talking to comedians.
Yes, it's so true. They can make themselves a victim in any emotional situation, even when they've just...
That is, in my experience, mostly male comedians, to be fair. So
that was my line to Steph when we first met. I think a few of her friends really said, "Are you sure you want to date a stand-up?" And I had to go, "Oh no, hashtag not all men, but it really is mainly the men. It really is.
It is. So I feel it's a little bit unfair that this is happening to a non-binary. This is a portrayal of a non-binary comedian, because I don't know that. I mean, I don't know many non-binary comedians, but I don't know that there is a stereotype about it. The great thing about being non-binary is there's no stereotypes about you yet. Well,
and just like that, I'm trying to build some, and then that's great.
But it is certainly true that male stand-up comedians do this. I've been talking to male stand-up comedians, people that the audience would know, obviously won't say their names, and remember once having a really good conversation with someone in Edinburgh, and a fan came up who said, I just want to say I've been flyering for you, and I had to come see your show because I'm flying for you, and I just think you're a brilliant comic. And that man just turned from me and was breathing it in like narcissistic waves. Whereas if someone had come up to me and said, I've been flying for you and I like your show, I would have gone, that's so kind of you, and had a really warm interaction, but then turned back to the friend who I was talking to, or at least included that friend in the conversation. But all this person did then was tell them how great they were for an hour in great detail, and that person never even saw me again. I was like I wasn't there, and I just backed away, and they never even said goodbye because they were so obsessed. And there's another comedian who, honestly, if I'm talking to him about him or his show, if I say, I love that bit where he's just like, I'm like the only person in the world. And if I say, it reminds me a bit of just Fostekew show, this is what's happened. They literally turn away and go, babe, should we go home? Like I've just disappeared, like an oasis. I've just disappeared.
Oh my God, gross.
Honestly, seriously, it's a real thing, and that's what they're parodying.
Be so gross.
Yeah, and I don't think they're parodying a non-binary comedian. I think
it is on record. They're parodying all stand-up comedians.
They are. And Cynthia Nixon said, "I'm only going to come back on the basis that my character has a queer storyline."
Yeah, lovely.
And at the same time, some writers in the room went, "I just dated a stand-up comedian. This is what happened to me," and they went, "Great, let's combine those." Yeah. That is, I think, what has happened.
I wish they'd asked Cynthia Nixon to do her sex scenes a bit less breathily in a feminist show. There's so much sighing. You can, every single time you kiss someone, you don't go,
Maybe she does, like tennis players.
Maybe she does, in fairness. I tell you what, I'll have to see if she's ever single and I'm ever single, try and get her snog in, just see how breathy it is IRL.
Stanford has become a Shinto monk. Absolutely bizarre storyline.
Why? And that's you could have made so much actual story.
But that's the thing.
Why did that lead to
that poor actor who died? I don't feel is being honoured in the best possible way. Dear. But
no.
Well, bless Willie Gusson. To be fair, Willie Gusson might have found this funny. I think that he became a Shinto monk. I think he might have found it funny.
Yeah.
I've let go of all the things.
But the sex conversation.
But I've let go of all things that no longer serve me, i.e. I'm now no longer in a brutal divorce with Anthony. He can have the apartment, he can have everything, absolutely fine. Which is, I mean, for Anthony must be like, wow, he's generously giving me stuff. But it's because he says, I've let go of all things that no longer serve me, which is sometimes what happens if people get into a sort of place of meditation and, self-awareness and awareness of the universe and all of that. Great. But that makes Anthony, I think, what we're meant to think, because his boyfriend's been saying, hey, why do you have to be a bottom or a top? Why can't we all switch? Because that's what young people do. I don't think it's always
I learned a word from this series about that.
What's that?
Because Miranda and someone else had is it verse? Is that short for versatile? So that's a queer person who does everything.
Tops and bottoms.
Tops and bottoms. But with women as well, there's all different. I'm learning all this stuff.
I didn't know that one. I didn't notice that one.
About you get... Jen Brister taught me that, because I've been trying to learn about butch lesbianism a bit more after seeing Grace Petrie's brilliant stand-up storytelling show, Butch You Do About Nothing. And you can. There's a thing called a thing. There are people who identify as stone butch.
Yes.
And that is a butch lesbian who you can't touch.
Yeah,
they do all the touching.
They want to do all the
giving, all the doing, all the actions.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, God, that's so fascinating.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really, as much as it's very silly that the monk business leads to the maybe I will receive some sex in my bum bum conversation. I thought the actual conversation was quite revelatory, that there's kind of a generational rift. And I found that if it's like kind of generally true, quite like educational and on the money in terms of like, isn't that funny that there's like, I don't know, like
I think it's something to do with Gen X,
a Gen X boomer generation where it's like, no, you're the man, I'm the woman. Whereas like my generation really laughs at my parents for insinuating or needing to ask who might be a man and who might be a woman in any same-sex or queer relationship. It's comical. It's like, well, can't we all just be a bit really complicated bit of both? I've always felt like that, ironically, in all of my straight relationships.
Yeah. Well, Hannah Gadsby says
my son's dad's always joking that I was definitely the bloke in our relationship.
Oh really? Hannah Gadsby says men always want to know which one of us is the man. Neither of us is the man. That's the point. It's just what does she say? Something like they can't imagine a relationship without a man in it, the way they can't imagine a living room without television. And it's just
brilliant.
It's funny. It's like neither of us is a man. That's the point. We're both women. That's the point. And but the top and bottom thing is about penetration. And what Anthony's saying is, I've always been the top, and in all the other relationships and hookups I've had, I've been with bottoms. I penetrate. I'm not penetrated. This is what I'm making out. I mean, they're coy again. They're quite coy the way they're coy about the abortion. But when Stanford gets enlightenment and realizes I should let go of things that no longer serve me, I think Anthony lets go of his sphincter and goes, "Let me open it up to being penetrated."
To what sounds like a 9-inch dick.
I feel like some people in the gay community will find this a very problematic storyline.
Oh, yeah, really?
I think they will, because they'll say, I am a topper, I'm a bottom, and I've got friends who are sides, and that aside is I don't want to be penetrated, and I don't want to penetrate. There's loads of other stuff I really like doing.
Oh, I've learned that from you. Thank you. I didn't know you could be a side.
Yeah.
I thought a side would just be someone who likes just sort of like spoon humping.
No. A side is I don't need penetration or particularly want it. I don't want it or need it. I'm just like, it's not like they would never do it if someone else really wanted it necessarily. But that's like, not mainly their thing. You know, you know that in bed sometimes it might be someone else's thing and you don't mind it, so you go, okay,
oh my god,
fair enough.
Course.
I'll have a go at it, but it's not what I fantasize about. A side is either someone who absolutely cannot do penetration, or doesn't want to, or isn't there.
It's not their best. It's not their absolute favourite.
They wouldn't even put it in their top 5. And that's this is what I think anyway. Please email me and tell me I'm wrong.
Do feed back to Deborah more than me. If you've got
but that is such a bizarre storyline that I just
how
think...
funny that I naively was like, God, I feel really educated. I don't remember, and maybe I'm watching the wrong things. I don't remember watching ever before, having the opportunity to watch 2 men in a sexual relationship have a conversation like that about what they are and aren't into in a mainstream bit of television. And I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed the openness of it and how candid it was. And I liked it. I really like that character.
Giuseppe, the poet. Yeah, I think he's a good thing. He's a good thing for Anthony, and I'm glad Anthony's getting a little bit of action.
Saying that though, if you have never been a receiver up the dark side, I don't don't start with that. Yeah, because that's terrible. That is.
He said he knows how to be gentle. I trust Giuseppe.
Yeah,
he's not going to give him the full pentameter.
Yes, made me gulp.
It might be iambic, but it's not going to be the full pentameter.
Okay.
I think it's just going to be a little bit of just the tip at first, with some poppers and lube.
He's hoping.
Can't
maybe
believe
even
I'm
just sort of crack
this.
on with a finger to start with, maybe.
Yeah,
or
exactly. He'll work him in.
Yeah.
Carrie and Aidan have been going so brilliantly. They're just happy. It's really nice to see them just be happy. And then
I know, but I'm like, well, he's going to die. He's going to die. Surely he's going to die. That's my prediction.
No, he's not.
I think he's going to choke on something that a Michelin-starred chef has made.
He's not going to die. He's not going to die. Big died. They're not going to repeat. Big. They're not going to. If she goes back into mourning, I'm out. That's it. I'm done. But
okay.
His son, who clearly is very unhappy with him being away, even on the weeks when he's with his mum, he's not getting on his mum. His youngest son is really going through some stuff. He's 14, as 14-year-olds sometimes do. And he stole Aidan's pickup truck, had some drinks and ran it into a tree, clearly to get the attention from his dad and tell his dad, well, if you're not going to come back when I ask you, you'll have to come back now because I'm in the hospital. I think that's a kind of cry for help. And he's crying, feeling very, very guilty, as understandably a parent might. Even though technically he didn't do anything wrong, I understand those feelings of guilt of a parent and saying, I should have been here and then this wouldn't have happened. And he could have killed himself. I mean, I think that's the thing that he's feeling. Yes, his bones will heal, but he could have killed himself. What could possibly happen now? Like, is Wyatt going to move in? I think Wyatt's going to come with him and be a difficult
I don't think
team.
Carrie really wants that. I think it's been quite interesting, the writing there, the way that Carrie's like, well, isn't he on his mum's week? Like, she's not been. And the episode closed with her saying, and just like that, for the first time, I was worried. And I was like, what, for the first time ever? I mean, he's got a teenage, I know he's got older kids as well, but like, God, like, what planet are you on? You've not done any worrying.
She's on planet Bradshaw. And she just thinks,
just like that,
just sees what's in front of her and goes,
the first time.
I really fancy you right now. So nothing bad can happen. We'll be in my, on some weeks we'll be in Manhattan, some weeks we'll be in Virginia, and we'll just be this perfect couple. And actually, what I do like, Aisling B, I think, was saying to Sarah Pascoe, who said it on this show, that they like that this isn't a show where she thinks, maybe I should have had kids. Maybe I should have had kids with Aidan.
Oh, no.
She doesn't. She's not a kids person, but she's clearly thinking about accommodating them, but really for Aidan's sake. But she wants to be, I think she's open to being a good stepmom. But now she's bought a 4-bedroom house for them, or apartment-like house for them. And it sounds like Aidan's like, I can't leave Virginia again.
I think what I want to happen, and what I want to happen is that he realises he does need to prioritise his kids, and that she's going to have to
come to Virginia all the time.
But she's been independent for a while now, but she's just going to have to like accept that he doesn't live with her all the time.
It's not Sex and the Virginia; it's Sex and the City.
He's going to need to be there for that kid while that kid's in such a pickle.
I think that kid's going to come. I think Kathy's going to say the kid wants to be with you. I think it would be best for him to get out of Virginia, make other friends. Why don't you, the other kids are at college, why don't you move to New York for a while with Wyatt? He's clearly needs a new scene. And I think she's going to have a full-time teenage son in New York, and he's going to give her hell. And I'm really looking forward to it.
Luckily, I reckon Charlotte's daughter will probably sleep with him, and that'll fix him.
Oh my God. He's only 14.
I love the idea that like Lily, the academic overachiever, who is so Charlotte's daughter that she announces the loss of her virginity to her own mum, who's ever done that in the history of time, is what I want. I love that they've written for her that she is going to bang literally everybody who enters her path. That is success. She's as if she wasn't enough of an overachiever.
Just to be clear, this Wyatt's 14 and is not shaggable until he's 16. So I really hope that doesn't happen, because that is an illegal storyline and absolutely wrong. I do like that she got off with Brady, though. I think that's quite funny. Jessica Fostekew, your thoughts on Sex and the City have been amazing.
I've loved doing this. Thank you for giving me the excuse to watch it.
Just loved it. I've just loved every second of it. Do you have anything to plug? Anything that the listeners should hear about?
Yeah, I do. I would really love people to listen to my podcast, Hoovering, that's all about eating. I've got some extraordinary guests coming up on it, including Grace Dent, Joe Lycett, some absolute whoppers. And then also, I have got a brand new show touring in 2024 called Metal, as in Fettle or Settle. And it's going to be going on sale at some point in September. So follow me on Instagram and or X at Jessica Fostekew, and I'll be releasing those dates.
I just can't do it.
Follow me on social media.
Excellent.
Because at some point in September, tickets for that will be going on sale.
Excellent.
Yay.
Have been listening to The Guilty Feminist Watchers, and Just Like That with me, Deborah Frances-White, and my very special guest, Jessica Fostekew. The producer for The Spontaneity Shop was Tom Zielinski. The Guilty Feminist is part of the Acast Creator Network, and Just Like That is on Max in the United States and Sky Comedy and Now in the UK. See you next time for episode 11, The Last Supper, Part 2.
country. Amazing.
Carrie Bradshaw is apparently now Jesus because she's having a Last Supper.
Very nice.
She's our Messiah. She's the Messiah of young women in the noughties who liked shoes and wanted more sex than they were having. The Guilty Feminist is provided exclusively from Acast. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.